Welcome to the Woorilla Poetry Prize Awards ceremony for 2020, live and online from Emerald, Victoria. My name is Anna M and I'm your host this afternoon, and it's going to be a delightful afternoon for you to enjoy one of the finest literary expressions, and that is poetry. The power of poetry, needed now more than ever in the year 2020, need I say more? COVID. Now let me set the scene for the next 90 minutes of what you are about to enjoy, and I hope you stay with us for the whole duration. We will officially kick-start the afternoon and hearing from some very special guests and a word from our lovely competition founder, Maria Millers, along with meeting our esteemed judges, Emily Zoe Baker and Nathan Curnow. We'll be hearing from our wonderful entrants for all categories, and that is youth, culturally and linguistically diverse, and as well as the open section. We'll hear the commended, the highly commended, the runners-up, and drum roll, of course, the winners. We'll have some great music entertainment from Lily Violet and James Franklin, and some giveaways. So you have to stay tuned and you have to work for them. We'll also have our raffle, and you can keep on entering the raffle throughout the whole 90 minutes up until the last 5 minutes. So just look on our Facebook page for the link. So buy those raffle tickets if you can. Some great giveaways there. Now, before we start this poetry party, I'd like to say a very special thank you to our major sponsor since 2015, and that is PAVE Festival, run by the Emerald Community House here in Emerald, Victoria, and to our 2020 event partners, Steele's Gate Winery and Babbage Food, which I hope you are all enjoying as accompaniment to our poetry. As we know, poetry is, of course, nourishment for the soul. Now, our very first guest and the official opener of this afternoon ceremony is long-time supporter of the competition, and that is former Mayor of Cardinia, Jeff Springfield. Welcome, Jeff Springfield. Well, we should be here, but this is what happens when we're going live. And actually, we've had to do this whole thing with COVID-19. We usually have a big auditorium with people, but it's just a few very select organisers in the room, and we're just waiting for the Mayor to give his introduction. Jeff Springfield, are you there?
Hello, I am there.
You scared me. I thought you weren't going to be there.
Great, I can see myself now with a little delay going on there.
No stress.
Thank you for the introduction. Your stage looks fabulous there. Well done. So look, officially, I'm actually not the mayor anymore. That's all. Well, no one's declared a councillor across Victoria at this point in time, to be honest. But hopefully I'll be there again, and I will be the representative for the Rangers Board in the for the next term anyway. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to celebrate the 2020 Woorilla Poetry Prize. So first of all, I'd like to thank all the people that have put their entries in, all the fabulous artists, firstly, and the great organisers that have put this together under the extremely difficult conditions that we're all facing in this year of 2020. So everyone deserves a big tap on the back for all that. So thank you. I'm honoured to be asked to come here today to say a few words and to kick this off. So thank you for that. And I would just like to say that this prize, the Woorilla Poetry Prize, it's a testament to the creative nature and the artistic flow that we have up in the hills here in Emerald, in Cardinia Shire. It is wonderful to see it going for so many years, and a really huge thank you to Maria, who is also joining us today, but who also created this back in 1989. It's still running strong. Fabulous effort. And Emerald Community House for now being the host and facilitator of this wonderful extravaganza of poetry and spoken word. So thank you to all that. It's great to see, from my point of view as a councillor for this region, how much arts and creativity we have across our region, and I strongly support that in council, and Cardinia Shire Council strongly supports this throughout the community. But it's community-led is what gets us to these great outcomes that we're going to see before us today. Because something like organisations and governments, and they can't do all of this. It's really, we can only help facilitate community to lead such wonderful projects. And that's what I aim to see to continue well into the future, so that maybe we can have the 50-year and 100-year anniversary one day of the Woorilla Prize as it continues to get stronger and stronger. It started off with humble beginnings in Emerald, and is now a national prize, a national competition, and even international. I'm told, and we even have an entry from I can't recall, but I remember it was at a distant place, I think in America somewhere. So fabulous effort to everyone for putting this together in such difficult times, and thank you again for having me along. I look forward to seeing what the outcomes and the entries are. So I'll hand it back to you, Anna, but thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for officially opening the awards ceremony and Cardinia's continued support of the competition. And indeed, it was Texas was our international entrance. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the founder of this initiative, which, as Jeff said, it was 31 years ago, who had the passion, drive and love of poetry to support and elevate this creative form. Please welcome Maria Millers, the founder of Woorilla Poetry Prize. I'll clap for you.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much, Jeff. It's good to hear your words and the support from the Cardinia Shire, and a very warm welcome to everybody across this wide brown land of ours, and as we heard, beyond. We have had entries from every state and the territories as well. The Woorilla Prize is late this year. Usually it is in mid-July, in the middle of winter, but then it's sort of coolish today. It was bitterly cold yesterday, but that's spring in Melbourne, and particularly in the Dandenong Ranges. It's been, as Anna has said, a difficult year for everybody, and yet poetry seems to be thriving. It seems like it's become an escape from the uncertainties that we've been living through. And Jeff mentioned a bit about the history. Actually, the first Woorilla Poetry Prize was held at the Periander Gardens in Olinda, and that was sponsored by Parks Victoria. And from then we actually persevered with a band of very, very dedicated volunteers. And as we said, it's 31 years this year. Jeff also mentioned about the creativity of this area, and this particularly applies to Emerald. Emerald was home to many, many important figures, literary figures in Australian history. In the 20s, the Palmers, Vanzanetti Palmer, came and settled here and attracted all the literati from Melbourne who used to come and spend weekends with them, poets, artists, composers. Then there were the notable Catherine Susanna Pritchard, spent time here, and I think her novel Opal was written while she was in Emerald. The founder of Australian Playwrights, Louis Essen, lived here for a while with his wife, who was our local doctor. And more recently, back in the 50s, the novelist Leonard Mann lived just outside of Emerald. And it continues to today. Emerald has and still is a centre for creativity. Now, to our judges, we have, in the past, we were absolutely blessed to have, from the very beginning, the wonderful Judith Rodriguez as our main judge. She was an incredibly respected and much loved poet, artist and academic, and above all also a human rights advocate. She believed in what we were doing, and she stayed with us for the whole duration until her death in 2018. But her generosity and her faith in emerging writers and support, incredible support for young writers, will always remain. The youth section this year, and we've named the open section in memory of Judith. Equally, the youth section, this is named after a wonderful life force that was Louise Rockney. Again, an incredibly respected and much loved poet who published a book called Prince. And sadly, we lost Louise after she judged the 2019 youth section. She was also very much involved with young people, and it is fitting that the youth section is named in her memory. I just want to give you a few words from one person who was very much was mentored by Louise. Claire James wrote to me, "It surprises me how often I want to tell her something, show her something, hear her voice, or how often she pops into my head when I smell certain spices or read certain words. What a space she's left behind, but what a great world she inspired in me." We will always remember these two wonderful women. But we are now extremely happy to have two new brilliant judges. In 2019, Nathan Curnow, a Ballarat-based, multiple award-winning, much published poet and spoken word performer and a teacher, became the open section judge and brought his star quality to the Woorilla Poetry Prize. Equally, this year we welcome the effervescent Emily Zoe Baker, another award-winning poet and international spoken word performer, who works with young people in schools to bring poetry in a fun way into the classroom. And I love a quote of hers: "Children should be seen and heard out loud." And we have heard them in the many entries that we got from young people right across this country. We also noticed that the youth section has been a showcase of the cultural diversity of Australia and highlights also the many concerns our young people are feeling. This year, we have introduced a new category for those whose first language is other than English. And as Anna mentioned, we have some wonderful speakers. We have today with us, we have Sandy Jeffs, who's published 7 volumes of poetry and a memoir, Flying with Paper Wings, Reflections of Living with Madness. Much of Sandy's work and writing has been about her struggle with schizophrenia, and she will share her thoughts with you. And we have also Professor Kevin Brophy, whose latest book of poetry, This Part of the World, published by Melbourne Poets Union, was recently launched at a virtual event. And do we have Kevin Brophy with us now? So I'd like to introduce to you Kevin Brophy. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello to everybody.
No?
Now, firstly, I want to congratulate every poet who entered this year's Woorilla competition. The competition could not exist without you, and the great jungles and gardens of poetry itself could not flourish without the seeds, the roots, the leaves, the vines, and the strange fleeting creatures you have invented in the name of poetry and let loose on the judge of this competition. You're each part of an ecology.
Okay, well, I did it again.
A world where poetry is possible, and it can't exist without you, the poets. You're an inspiration, in the meaning that that word usually keeps deep in its shadow. Your breath goes into the breathing world and brings an important kind of life to it through poetry.
Sorry, what happened?
My name's Kevin Brophy.
Mum was speaking.
I'm a poet by default. That's about all I can really do in this world. And I want to make a few specific remarks on poetry and the life of poetry. None particularly original, but in the way of reporting on ideas and impressions that have had a recent impact.
Great on Facebook.
Oh, really?
Like most of you, I've been in lockdown
Enough about her, what about me?
for over 100 days, riding the ups and downs of the daily graphs, the sadness of the body count, and the daily numbers of cases, managing shifts in mood and finding in myself changing priorities as the lockdown extended and tightened over those months. Like you, I felt threatened and I felt protected. Like you, I've had to search in myself for ways of keeping going beyond the home maintenance projects and the replanting of the garden. And during this time, I've thought that poets have one small but important advantage during such a cataclysmic time. Poets have, I think, in general, a strong sense of the impermanence of ideas, relationships, and institutions. We have a felt sense of the vulnerability of beliefs, traditions, supposed strengths, and common certainties. Change comes without so much surprise to a poet, for what is poetry about if it's not about change, especially the importance of changes in perception? Every poem we write, every poem we read, has designs on us to shift or change or transform for us the way the world looks. I came across the following poem by Elizabeth Bishop recently. It's an intimate love poem, not published in her lifetime, and only discovered among her papers a decade and a bit ago. It goes like this. It is marvellous to wake up together at the same minute. Marvellous to hear the rain begin suddenly all over the roof, to feel the air clear, as if electricity had passed through it from a black mesh of wires in the sky. All over the roof the rain hisses, and below the light falling of kisses. An electrical storm is coming, or moving away. It is the prickling air that wakes us up. If lightning struck the house now, it would run from the 4 blue china balls on top, down the roof and down the rods all around us. And we imagine dreamily how the whole house caught in a birdcage of lightning would be quite delightful rather than frightening. And from the same simplified point of view of night and lying flat on one's back, all things might change easily, equally, since always, to warn us, there must be these black electrical wires dangling. Without surprise, the world might change to something quite different. As the air changes, or the lightning comes without our blinking. Change, as our kisses are changing, without our thinking. And yes, I have to say back to the poem, the world changed in 2020 without our blinking. And it might be a change that brings something new with it, or a change that takes something we thought we owned away from us. We must wait and see. Part of the delight of this poem is the linking through rhyme of words such as hisses and kisses, and both words in turn linked to electricity and water, a connection thrilling with danger, as the whole poem does. Or blinking and thinking, as though one has something important to do with the other. And we know that rhyme has as much to do with propositions as it has to do with sound. So in these ways, we can be changed or shifted by a poem, or at least alerted to the possibility of change in a world that cannot ever be truly safe from storms of one kind or another. 4 times in the last 6 lines, the poem repeats the word change, and what we're alerted to is the neutrality of the word. It's not progress, and it's not decay that she's denoting, but change. And of course, what we make of this change is up to us. I hope that in poetry, each of you has found new and surprising ways to perceive and perhaps even to transform the difficult changes that we've undergone in 2020. Do keep writing and do keep making connections.
Thank you, Kevin Brophy, for some interesting insights into the power of poetry during these times, and also apologies, you may have experienced some the audio during that time. We're just live, and that's what happens when you've got technology. But luckily we have it, or we wouldn't be able to broadcast here today, so that's great. And thank you to Maria for giving that lovely introduction. Also speaking about Louise Rockney, I remember Louise very fondly and always catching up, and she just had a love for literature equal to my mother's, Maria Miller. So great to hear that she is now part of the youth category or named after it. So wonderful. Now, exciting times. It's actually our first giveaway for Stell's Gate wine. And to win this, you need to answer a question. And to get the answer, you have to put it on our comments page on Facebook. So you have to earn it though. So I'm going to give you the question, and Jeff Springfield mentioned it, Maria Miller's mentioned it, I think I even mentioned it. So the question is, what year was the Woorilla Poetry Prize founded? We did say it a few times, and you might have to use some math the way I did it, but you can find that out. So put your name or your answer on Facebook, and we'll let you know the first winner after our youth section. So, speaking of which, it is time to now meet our first amazing judge, and that is Emily Zoe Baker. As my mother said, she is the award-winning poet, educator, slam nerd, and spoken performer who has toured all around the world as guest of international festivals. She also, by the way, as you will see, has the best Zoom background with rainbows and stars. I think it's pretty good. She is the judge of the Louise Rockney Youth section. Please give some virtual claps as we introduced Emily Zoe Baker. Good afternoon, Emily. How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Your Zoom background is magical.
I love being under my fake rainbow.
I think we all need to be under a rainbow. Now, Emily, you're obviously judge of the Louise Rockney Youth section. Tell us about this section and how, if you thought there were any emerging themes or distinction themes for the youth of this section this year.
Unsurprisingly, it was there were quite a lot of dark themes. I think 2020 has been a challenge for young people particularly, and learning online. There were poems about trying to learn English on Zoom. There were poems about the sort of inner struggle and the loneliness that reflects what's happening at the moment. So that's kind of that was an unsurprising and common theme.
And how was the standard of the youth poems?
Absolutely astonishing, I would say. The word is astonishing. I mean, I've judged quite a few competitions in my lifetime as a poet, and this one was a very special one indeed. The standard of the poems was crackling.
Oh, I like that. Crackling. I remember we actually had a Zoom catch up, and I remember you said that one of the few of the poets you read, it had a different colour on the page, and it was a beautiful way, which I would expect from a poet to describe it. So you obviously enjoyed the standard of poetry, so that's wonderful. Well, should we enjoy some of their poetry now?
Let's do it.
I think we're going to run one of our first commended poems. I'll take it over to Phil and our technical staff to run that for you.
Hi everyone, my name's Clay, and today I'll be reading out my poem, The Forest of Emerald Green. Come in close, I'll set the scene. It was a shining forest of emerald green. Like glittering stars under bright green tints, these jewels were as small as peppermints. Small as they were, they acted as leaves and surrounded the branches of the towering trees. It's a forest of magic that I'm describing, and it's up in the clouds where it can keep hiding from the men who once tried to steal what they'd seen, the jewels from the forest of emerald green.
That was Clay McCurry from Victoria. What a lovely young man.
Oh my God, he's like a little, his poem to me read almost like a song.
Yes.
And he is clearly very talented.
Now, Emily, you're going to read the next commended poem. You're going to read that for us?
I am. This commended poem there was actually 3 from this poet in the commended section. 4, sorry. more from this poet in the community section. A very prolific poet. The one I've chosen to read is called Catharsis by Germaine Ubaldi. She also had Time, Self-Portrait and How to Be Straight as commended poems, so I'd like to shout out to those, but this one is called Catharsis. So, breathe with me, love. We'll walk among the stars tonight and wrap them in a napkin to save them for later. And I'll braid them into your hair to illuminate the clown fish at high tide. Breathe with me, love. We'll straighten out the pages and write poetry into our honey of flowers in a language that only we understand. Somewhere in amongst it all will be your name. Breathe with me, love. We'll grow black irises in the sunshine, and Lord, you'll look so beautiful with mud on your nose and the fire and the brimstone past our fence dancing in your eyes. Breathe with me, love. I'll hold your hand as we turn to earth and sing lullabies to drown out the insects that feast on our flesh until my voice gives out. Maybe it will be this.
Wow. Can you hear me?
No.
Stay until sunrise. And it strikes me that here, right here, dancing on the border between blue and copper and rose-tinted daydreams and sharp, bright reality, we're silent, but never still in the silence, our colours bleeding so loudly through the dark. The road is cold, and the street is empty, and the echoes of the soles of our shoes striking pavement fill the hollow space. Manic, fervent heartbeats, strung between the light poles as we dodge the sterile light cutting white edges into the grass. The air tastes like lavender, like dew and honey, and earth and mist, and heroin and bitumen, and each of our 1,000, 100,000 little secrets and hopes, tucked away, gathering dust. But they tear through the dizzy night, burning neon in the seams. And we laugh like there's no one left to hear us, laugh like we'll never come down, laugh like there's no end to the high, no end to the electricity scorching our veins, the fever, the hunger for cold night air. And it's sweet in my tongue, and we're trembling as we run, our hearts beating too fast and our bodies burning ice cold, and we're fragile, fleeting creatures, ruled by that aching need to run away from all we've ever known, to rise, to sink, rip through the sky and taste the clouds, and drift and take all the sand on the bottom of the sea with us as a keepsake. And I don't know myself anymore. Not like I know you. Not like I know the violet stain in your eyes, the glint of your white teeth, the sun preserved in the amber honey gold in your eyes, and the feel of your heartbeat raging softly under the rose petal velvet of your hands. We reach the park, and I rip off my shoes and dig my feet into the soil and anchor myself to the heartbeat I feel there, and I'm home. I'm home and I want to stay here forever, and I want to go so far away. And you breathe rosewater into the night, and you look so beautiful like this, shining and flawless and luminescent. Our hearts tied together and wound so tight into this moment that never ends and reverberates through the still air and leaves us heady and reeling and free. And piece by piece we break. And I can see daylight in your fractures. I can feel your fingertips against my cheeks. I don't want to go home. Me neither. Me neither. Then stay. Stay. Stay with me, please. I miss you. I hate this distance. I wish we could be like this forever. We can. The night's almost over. And it strikes me that here, right here, dancing on the border between blue and copper and rose-tinted daydreams and harsh, cold reality, we're silent, but never still in the silence, our hearts bleeding so loudly through the dark. And I don't know myself anymore. Not like I know you. Not like I know the warmth painting your skin and the shadows hiding in your collarbones, the soothing hush in your voice and the current flowing red hot through your veins. I'm so vulnerable, standing still and quiet under the glittering sky. But I promise I'll stay until sunrise.
And the sun was taught to glow. Pop. Man fell in love with the sun as the fruit of a lily-pilly tree would burst onto the tongue, too swift, too sweet, too reminiscent of home. Man wished upon golden wattles as if they were sun-kissed dandelions for the sun to learn of his love. In return she sang life across the land on which he stood, a bush ballad to mankind of heat-browned earth and coastal waters in flux. Mustard fields grew as she took the colour yellow and ran far into the horizon, held up red and green kangaroo paws pressed into copper-rich estate. She braided the flower heads of a Woorilla together, forging crowns from which mankind would seek power. The sun was born from chaos, but she strived to find peace in mankind. Man once prayed skyward, hoping the sun could hear his gratitude, all she needed to continue her peace. In time, his jowls swelled with greed. Mankind swapped honey-laden skies, spun from sunlight and sown across clouds for pitiless smoke. He'd become all that was withered and wretched stood wheezing beneath flecks of fog and smoke. The sun begged to be heard by man once again, each prayer a fistful of herself to be caught in the air above him, denser than she remembered. It too glittered to his feet. She had all but burnt out. Pop. Man fell out of love as the fruit of a lily-pilly tree would burst beneath his padded heel. Too sudden, too sharp, too incriminating, leaving them both asking where the other had gone. Thank you.
My English Teacher on Zoom by Jermaine Obalder. Guys, please turn on your audio and video. I've memorized every line on this blank screen, and I think my thoughts are starting to turn into those black squares. When a sound, a thought plays, quickly forgotten, a brief green glow and gone. So I've forgotten what human faces look like, and I'm tired, damn it, I'm so goddamn tired of my own. Because it's turned into those black squares, deadened, and I'm starting to hate the grid view, because it's just a blink, a brief green glow, and gone behind the deadened eyes. So I guess I'll just avoid mirrors. It's okay, I can relearn how to emote in 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 days. No, 4 months, 3 weeks, 5 days. No, what day is it today? Does it matter? Is time just another of these black squares in the grid view? I'm starting to hate it. So I've memorized every line on my bedroom ceiling. And I think my thoughts are starting to turn into a brief green glow behind the deadened eyes and gone. And I'm starting to feel like I wake up to fall asleep, like I was born to die. Guys, please turn on your audio and video. Mic's unmuted, yet the silence is deafening, because we're all here waiting, but nobody has anything to say. Okay.
That was Jermaine. Jermaine, obviously, with my English teacher on Zoom, which unfortunately for a lot of us Metro parents, is a story of our lives during COVID-19. Emily, she's still featuring prominently in this category, isn't she?
She certainly is. She is what I would describe as one of the more prolific youth poets thoughts I've come across. I'm very excited by her work.
Okay.
And I think that brings us to announcing the runner-up.
Correct. Are you going to surprise me with someone? Who's it going to be? The suspense. Who is the runner-up to the Louise Rockney Youth Section?
Well, look, this is the runner-up today. It's a brief poem. It's quick-witted, but it's so perfectly weighted. It was irresistible to me. It was tasty. It made me feel like after reading it, I knew some sort of beautiful little secret. And it is Flowers by Jermaine Ubalda.
Thank you, Emily.
Flowers by Jermaine Ubalda. There are flowers in my head. They bloom between spiderweb cracks with a psychedelic sheen. Honey pouring into my dreams. Pollen falling onto my shoulders. You sowed weeds, little black seeds, scattered among the flowers. Poison ivy, brambles. Their pollen left angry red marks. They tasted like black jelly beans, like licorice or aniseed. You shoveled it into my throat. There was the heaving of lungs. They sprouted from my ears. They formed a noose and whispered things. They burned my eyes so I couldn't fall asleep. I can't fall asleep. There were flowers in my head.
Well, congratulations, Jermaine, for the runners-up. Now, Emily, another big drum roll, because now we get to the winner.
The winner of the 2020 Woorilla Youth Poetry Prize goes to a poem that stunned me a little bit. I've got to say, I've just got to preface this by saying that all these were read blind. I had no idea the name of the poet attached to the poem, nor the age. And I was awed that this poem was written by a teenager for first. And it had such drama, such insight. On one page, we travelled back 4.6 billion years, and then the poet drags us through time, thrashing us into the mountains, hitting us with fire and noxious gases along the way, knocking us out, and then reviving us again, only to kill us one more time, but this time a little bit more softly. This poet is clearly as prolific as Dickinson, and I believe one day will be as famous. Congratulations again to Jermaine Ubalda.
Well done. Well done. We'll play that poet now. Play that poem now.
Mother. 4.6 billion years ago, she watched the birth of gods, a silent passenger. Bones of iron forged by chaos' hand, she, the ichor. 3.8 billion years ago, she raised up stardust with earth-warmed palms, umbilical vent gently rocking to a volcanic beat, a primordial lullaby. In the strange, lightless trails of her womb, life took shape. 400 million years ago, she ascended with the tetrapods, clinging to salt-gilded skin, her slender fingers caressing that reptilian maw and trembling with the sweet release of breath. 65 million years ago, she wept at Armageddon as the fire rained down. The taste of copper on her tongue, the heavy bodies at her feet, sank into her grieving embrace. Home. 300,000 years ago, she kissed the feverish lips of the Homo sapien, walked with them out of the burning plains. Today, she scalds the earth with bitter tears, hair pulled back, jaw forced open, the noxious sludge of civilization poured between melting lips. She lays powerless against the capitalist bedframe, screams her throat raw to the corporate pounding of the machine. A queue of pinstripe suits at the bedroom door, demanding more, more, more. Swollen with the melting of glaciers, cheeks flushed red with heat. Her skin peels away in flakes. She burns with her children. Where color once bloomed, and clownfish giggled amongst the shaded pines, the bleached footprints of death are all that remains. Amongst it all, she mourns. The volcanic beat, the cradle song, the stirrings of life within her belly, a forgotten dream.
Wow, what a sophisticated poem, and congratulations again to Jermaine. Great writing, great effort. Clearly, I've had a bit of a misspent youth, so much talent, and obviously the poetry future is bright. Just before we move on, Emily, I can announce that we've got our first winner for the Stillsgate wine, and it was Kevin Brophy. Well done. Section or category is so important.
I'm sorry, that just cut, the sound just cut out then, so I didn't hear anything that you just said.
Oh, you're not listening to me, Emily. No, I was just saying that you're the judge of the culturally and linguistically diverse section. Tell us a little about that and why it's so important. Can you hear me now, or we've got a bit of a technical glitch? I think you can't hear me.
No, I can't hear, sorry.
I think you should be able to hear me. Can you hear me now? No?
I can hear your voice, but I don't think the microphone's working.
You can hear us, or? No. Okay, well, bear with us one tick.
I've got you back.
Ah, we're back. I was just going to use this opportunity to promote that you can still buy raffle tickets. And the raffle tickets are online or Facebook link, and they are a Babbage food voucher as well as a Dimmicks book voucher. So you can still buy those. I was going to use that as a promo, and I did anyway, so that's good. So we were just saying about the culturally and linguistically diverse section. Tell us a bit about that and why it's so important.
Yes, this is a new section for the Woorilla Prize, I believe.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So I think it's fantastic and a wonderful thing to include. Language is for everybody. It is words are equal, and it's wonderful to be able to have them celebrated in every language.
And obviously very difficult to do it in your second language because it's hard to think in a different language when you've had a different one as your first one to get that expressive technique.
Especially with poetry.
That's what it is. Well,
definitely the hardest one, ask any student.
Well, shall we hear some of these with the commended and the runners up, and you're going to take us through to the winner, I believe.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily. Sorry, Emily, would you like to announce the first commended?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I'm getting a little bit of a lag on the thing, but I think we're here. Okay, so commended in the culturally and linguistically diverse section is Endless by Sally Sun. The runner-up is Jasmine Jackson with The Princess. And the winner is the first section is Two Worlds by Disha Awashi.
And we're going to hear those poets now, I believe. We'll take to those poets now. It was just experiencing a slight delay, but that is what happens when we're live and all technical. But it won't be too long before they come up in a few seconds. Here is the commended section now.
Hello, I'm Sally, and I'm going to be reading my poem, O Endless. O endless moonlight, whisper my dream to dawn, for I may forget in face of the red sun. O endless darkness, what am I but a ripple in time? He falters, a wave. I am. I stretch up the black sand in a fleeting row of white foam. I ebb back into O endless ocean, seeps back into heaven where all dreams come and go. O endless soul, I remember, remembering, like a dream in a dream in a dream. Quasi? O endless circle, today will be my first, tomorrow will be my first. When will it end? The end. Thank you.
Yes, we're here live.
Yes, Emily, we're here.
Oh, great. Okay, so this is the princess poem. I'm going to read this one out for you. This one is by Jasmine Jackson. I want to set the record straight about the princess in this story. She does not run away with the prince. She's 9 and carving initials into the trees around the palace garden. Her mother, the queen, asks her which noble prince, lord or knight, she has fallen madly in love with. And a few white lies make her so sure it was a boy that she was thinking about. She is 11 and has begun to notice that couples are always a pair of opposites. Her mother, the queen, thinks that the princess is far too young to understand the ways of the world, but the princess knows she's old enough to realize why it was a girl's face that she dreamt of. She is 13 and can say the word ally, so she is adjacent but not part of anything. Her mother, the queen, believes that the princess will soon find a gallant prince to sweep her off her feet. However, the princess is too busy thinking about kissing her best friend. She is 15 and the drawbridge lowers. As her true feelings come out, her mother, the queen, considers the rainbow to be just part of the phase, but surprisingly accepts the princess's identity all the same. The princess now understands why she has always felt different from everybody else, because she doesn't want a castle or a chest of silk gowns. She doesn't want a kingdom or even a golden crown. She wants to hold your hand where everybody else can see. She wants love without fear, judgment, or scrutiny. The word gay begins to roll off her tongue, and it is whispered and spoken and screamed to make up for all those lost years, because sometimes the princess doesn't want a prince.
Well, that's bucking all their trends, isn't it? Sometimes a princess doesn't want a prince. Much better, I think. When I was growing up, we always wanted a prince, so it's nice to look at the future bright with the young women there today. That was great. Now, Emily, who is the winner? I think you may have mentioned it, but just to reconfirm that and read the poem.
True Worlds by Disha Awashti.
And we're going to play that winner now.
Two Worlds by Disha Awashti. Which dimension do I fit in? The new one or the one of my kin? I wanted the blonde hair and white skin, like two armies raging inside of me, not able to decide. Am I Australian? Am I Indian? Who would I be? My roti discarded because it wasn't what the other kids ate. My name made fun of because it wasn't something I ate. Was there something so wrong with speaking my language? People looked at me as if it was sacrilege. I had an Indian accent, such descent, because I sounded different. Now I look at myself in the mirror and I think I can see myself a little clearer. Thongs and butter chicken, barbecues and bindis. I am Indian. I speak Hindi. I am Australian. I speak English. I am me.
Wow, another deserving winner there with Disha. You know, I learnt Japanese in university and I could never imagine being so expressive in a second language. I could probably try, but it'd have to be very short, like hey or yeah, that'd be it. So well done to those entrants, and again, thank you, Emily, for your contribution as judge to those categories. Much appreciated.
It was like I was sitting in a bath of diamonds for all of those times. It was such a gift. So thank you so much. It was an honour, and also it was just really fun. So thank you so much.
I know why you're a poet. I'm going to think about that, a bath of diamonds. Thank you, Emily. I love it. Now I think it's time for some music. Poetry and music, like cheese and wine, is the perfect dual combination. I would like to introduce Lily Violet to perform, and after that, Sandy Jeff, who will give a personal insight on how poetry can transform, inspire, and empower you through difficult times and challenging times. So if we could please now play Lily Violet.
Hi, I'm Lily Violet, and you're about to watch the music video for my debut single, Doesn't Mean You're Lonely, that came out in August. It is based on the passing of a local boy, Trent Kennedy, and how it impacted the local community. I was lucky enough to be a part of the Cardinia Music Residency, where I was able to work with some musicians from Brunswick, and we finalised it. But the main part of this process was the story behind Trent's passing. So it was about maybe a 10-month process with organising like from the main first song lyrics that I wrote down in a notepad and the first guitar chords, which actually changed quite a lot from my first writing to releasing it. And before releasing it, I made sure that I was in contact with his family, and especially his mum, Tracy, to make sure that everything was she would like her son to be remembered as. Since releasing, like, a really, really good response from the local community and also from people all over Australia, me and say that it's got a really nice story behind it. I had a few people actually reach out on the day of release saying thank you for writing a song for the underdogs and for the ones that struggle, because the song doesn't necessarily target suicide as a topic itself, just mental illness as a whole. And I had actually someone message me and say, thank you, this song has made me feel I was having a really, really bad day, but now it's on my good vibes playlist or something like that. Just the fact that it's made someone's day, that was the purpose of the song. If it could bring someone out of their rut, if that song could make them get out of bed, then it had served its purpose, and I was happy with that. I started with the lyrics. Getting the words from here to paper without having to worry about what order it's in the way of a song has made it easier to actually develop the songs afterwards. The motivation is behind the song. So if it's more of an emotional song, it tends to start from a poem. If it's just a song where I chuck voice memos on, record for 5 minutes, and whatever comes out, then they tend to be more of the energetic songs than anything. The thing I'm looking forward to the most, performing in front of a live audience again, instead of from this exact wall behind me, we have people enjoy it in person, and whether they know the lyrics to my songs now, and just being in like a room with other people that are enjoying what I'm writing or what I've been doing during the lockdown. So no one's actually heard Doesn't Mean You're Lonely live since it's been released, other than me singing to a backing track of the actual song.
In this world, we've all gotta try. Sometimes we can get out of bed, and some days we can't. Every time the voices hold us back, as long as you keep going, I know you can. This world's fucked up, but I know you're alright. I believe that you can get through this. Even when you wanna give up, you'll fight. Just try and try and try and try again. As long as you keep going. Only what's left behind. A town of broken people standing in line. We thought no one would listen 'cause you weren't good enough, but it's okay not to be. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely. I'm around here. If you need to tell me anything, just because you're alone doesn't mean you're lonely. I'm around here. If you need to tell me anything at all. If you need to tell me anything at all. It's okay not to be.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me to speak at the launch of the Woorilla Poetry Prizes, and congratulations to everyone who's won a prize. I'd like to say a few words about poetry and what it means to me. We're living in tough times. These plague days have tested our resolve and resilience like nothing else. COVID-19 is shaping our lives in ways we could never have imagined. But for me, it is schizophrenia that has shaped my life in ways I never thought were possible. Spooks and phantoms have invaded my mind. I have lurched from the invasion of voices to visions of the Virgin Mary. My psychotic episodes have been deep and perilous. The burden of mental illness is plain to see. Self-esteem or a positive life force are casualties of schizophrenia. For a long time, I had no identity other than being someone who was mad. I was a failure, someone with no future. I moved as a shadow in the world without anyone taking notice of who I was or what I did. Yet simmering beneath these losses of reality have been the voices of creativity, the voices that have emerged through poetry. Recovery ought to be about restoring self-esteem and finding something that gives one hope, purpose, and meaning. I found it through my love and passion for poetry. Theodore Adorno, in response to the Holocaust, said, "A beautiful thought in a time of pain is a lie, and to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric." I believe that in times of pain, whether cultural or personal or COVID-19, we more than ever need poetry. Poetry peels the layers from life's distortions and travails, giving meaning where meaning cannot be found. The poet seeks to order an ever increasingly disordered world, becoming a kind of connoisseur of chaos. Poetry very readily describes desolation and anguish, and is capable of reflecting fragmentation in language that soars. Someone once said that poetry is the view from the sick room of life. My poetry comes from a similar place. It comes from my mad mind's journey into the reaches of the sick room of the other side. Poetry is my search for identity. The search for identity is my poetry. My poetry is a song of lamentation. It is the search for the missing link between all the contradictions we face in life. In poetry, I attempt to grasp reality and create reality. I seek to move angels to tears and make a stern God laugh. Poetry has enabled me to impart the agony and humour of madness, to elicit compassion for all those disabled by its clasping claws. Poets have discovered that beauty could be made from ugliness, sublimity from sordidness. The poet, Wallace Stevens, said, "The poet is the priest of the invisible." I ask, what is more invisible than the mad mind? I try to sing the chaos, uttering sounds draped in poetic resonances, hoping they settle on sympathetic ears. In poetry, you can say the unsayable, utter the unutterable, speak the unspeakable, and sense the insensible. To see the world through a poet's eyes is to see a carnival of ideas and weave an assemblage of words, and this is precious to me. Once I was a person with no future, no hope, no self-esteem. For years I languished in bed, wasting away in a psychotic stupor. I now have a reason for getting out of bed, to deal with the unpleasant intrusions that persist, to try and remain as well as possible so I can gather the thread of words and forge poems that attest to who I am. We can never know the paths our lives are going to take or the strength we are going to find in the face of adversity, especially when it comes to questions of sanity and madness or being caught up in a pandemic. Indeed, for me, to write poetry after madness is sanity.
But
thank you.
Okay, I'll just do this bit. Sorry. What an inspiring and powerful reflection into the gift of expression and creativity to healing in troubled times. Very generous of Sandy Jeffs, who so poetically shared her own lived experience. Now, it is time for the big girls and boys, the open section. It is with great pleasure that I introduce the judge of this section, Nathan Curnow, and as Maria Miller said, he is a poet, spoken word performer, and he has won many, many, many poetry awards, including the 2007 Woorilla Poetry Prize for Gently Against the Grain. He is the judge of the Judith Rodriguez Open and Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Open section. It is Nathan Curnow. Good afternoon. I think he's here. I hope he is, because I didn't want to have to judge this section. Can you hear me? Ah, there you are. I was going to say in the digital flesh.
I am. I don't have a rainbow. I'm jealous of Emily's rainbow.
Disappointing, but it's great that you're here. And I was going to say you've won the Woorilla Poetry Prize, so it's almost like the gakusei has become the sensei, if I'm keeping my Japanese analogies going.
I don't know a lot of Japanese, but I think that was pretty accurate. Yeah,
from student to teacher.
It was lovely to win it back, and it meant so much, and it's been a really significant prize for me over the years.
Wonderful. Now, speaking of 2020, it's been a very difficult year, but perhaps we say a great year for artists, because when comes challenging and difficult times, we find a little bit more resolve, like love and hate, and challenging times can bring the best out of our creativity. How have you found the standard this year?
Look, the standard was very strong. It's always very strong. This year, we saw a lot of poems about, I guess, exploring those abstract things like fear and love and what black is, exploring those things through poetry. We also saw, a lot of the popular subjects of poetry, so love, loss, politics, of course. But I guess the strongest theme in this year's swag of poems was the bushfire crisis and COVID that we're experiencing right now.
I can imagine. So should we hear some of those poems, or we're actually going to start off with the culturally and linguistically diverse winner?
Yeah, look, it's great to see this category introduced this year. I really hope it supports new voices and it brings new experiences and perspectives to us. And it's my pleasure to announce the winner of this category this year is Ranjita Krishna for the poem The Ugly Truth. It's a poem about pain, about change, and the daily fight for self. I believe we're going to hear it soon.
We're going to hear it right now.
Hello everyone, my name is Ranjita Krishna. Tonight I will be reading my poem titled The Ugly Truth. The ugly truth. I look in front of me, a vast area is all I could see. Bare branches, fallen leaves. I stretch my hand to see how far will it go. My helpless little heart beating wildly, observing the turn of seasons. Every day I'm struggling to know who I am. I keep fighting but don't have a reason. Tell me, do you ever wonder too? I wonder if I get another chance before everything fades under the dark ocean of my mind, the profanities under my breaths, the smiles etched on my face, and tears that are about to be shed at any moment. It hurts. All the whispers in my head, they started shouting, but I know they are lying. I'm frozen. I cannot move anymore. I doubt there could be a second chance, but then came the encouraging spring. I keep on standing strong, even though my knees are trembling. I wear masks every day, long forgotten my own face. I was different from the rest. That's why I tried to be similar. I will forsake myself. I will change to fit in. It wasn't anybody who abandoned me, but I will abandon myself. This is the ugly truth that's hidden behind the lies of my life. Thank you.
Not sending you poetry. Your books on my glass coffee table, reflections of a temporary self. This is what gives us time. New books by poets you used to know in your youth. Your Brunswick days with Jane and Margot and all the others you loved and lost and wrote poems for. You have urged me out of the dark to the launches of books of poetry into the world. You want signatures. You want me to think of something beyond myself, and poetry and poets might do it. This was always your promise. You want me to send the books across Bass Strait, where you are now, living the life time has given you, while I wait here hoping this is a temporary self. The books in a certain light cast shadows on the glass. Their covers call across the room. Look at me and remember this night, that self, what time gives us. If I send them now, there'll be a clear outline that says, here was something, and now empty spaces ringed by dust. The shapes of something taken away or gone. I withhold what you want from me like a punishment. Such a simple thing to go to the post office and send off a parcel. I'm struggling with the simplest things. You were supposed to come back. This was our glass, our books on the table. One of the poets writes about marriage, longevity, love. Still together after all this time. It's almost unbearable. I want to say to you, you will never have books like this there. You will never have there what you can have here. And what am I now? Your connection to the mainland? Your own private postal service? For all the poetry and all the world you can't access on the island? In Tasmania, they say they're going to Australia when they mean Melbourne. You call it deliverance with cars. It's a good line. You're good with lines. But this line's growing fainter. Soon I won't be able to hear you standing beside me. Soon I won't be looking over my shoulder, making sure you're still there. I didn't expect life to turn out like this, I say. It's still turning, you say. We don't know how it will turn out yet.
Not yet. I can see, I'm not. That was Gayleen Carbis with Not Sending You Poetry. That's our first commended. But with our next commended, we're actually going to be treated with a live performance from Ivy Island with her commended poem, Acorn. And I believe she'll just be coming up very shortly. Just waiting for her to come into I think we've got a little bit of a waiting room, and it's sometimes you've got to wait a little bit longer. Whilst you're waiting, that gives you an opportunity to get online and perhaps purchase some raffle tickets for Babbage Food Hamper as well as our Dimmick book voucher. And I may actually now take this time, whilst we're waiting for Ivy to come online, to say we have had our second winner of the Stillsgate wine. And it was actually, how bizarrely, Gayleen Carbis. And she has won a bottle of Stillsgate wine, that will be coming to her. I might give you, actually, while we take the time to give you the next question, which is, I think, a little easier. And it is, who is the judge of the 2020 Louise Rockney Youth Section? So get your answers in, and you can come back afterwards for those ones. So I think that we're almost there to listen to Acorn by Ivy Island. And we're right to go now. Almost. I get told these things and then they change, but such is what would you call it? The nuances of technology. We're working on it, we're getting there soon. So she'll be starting almost now. Not quite now. It's what we call a poetic pause. It will be coming there soon, very soon. But if not, can we go to the next commended while we wait, or we're sort of still in that holding pattern in the technology room? Before we came live, and I don't know if any participants had the opportunity to join our little bit of a chit chat. We had a 15-minute chit chat beforehand, and we were going through some of the beautiful poems. And one of the ones that came up was the 1922 poet by Robert Frost, which was The Road Not Taken. But we had this argy-bargy because a lot of people thought it was The Path Not Taken. Well, we had that argy-bargy in our studio here. So I don't know if you know that poem, but it was one of the ones I first learned in English literature many, many moons ago, and one of my favourite ones. And I was just thinking that it's been an interesting time with the poetry competition going technical. Obviously, we're having a few issues at the moment. But had we not had the technology, if we'd had the pandemic in 1989 when it was first founded, we would not have been able to actually even run the competition because we would not have had the technology, and who knows the future of it. So, well, luckily the pandemic didn't happen then. We're unlucky it happened now, but that's the way pandemics are. So I think now we are right to go with Ivy Island and her poem Acorn. Or I'm going to have to say it a few times. I think we're right to go.
Acorn.
There we go. Almost.
Working this through then, in the freezer sits an oak seed. Grant this disc of vital spark, true wintering. Allow time to do what time will. Take in a tiny death, magic it to August life. Give it over to the quickening. Pluck it out for planting in spring. When the tree sprouts, this suspension, this freezing over, this nothing all the time, empty stillness. What is nothing? Will have been one universal instant, one essential delay, necessity. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't smirk at this, as though you did not need to be told, as though that
something to
rule
say
is
if I've got
now
nothing.
redundant, as though your grief,
Is it going straight to commended?
as though it were all so simple, naming loss, giving word to this deep howl in the rotting moss.
You give me.
As though it were human to allow after pause, life, as though one could simply mark the darks of solstice, dutifully map out the returning line of light along the passage tomb floor, take heed as ancestors all the while whisper, thus and so, thus and so, and navigate towards remedy, as though you'll ever leave off your keening for the sake of scientific fact. Still, a life pod graces the suburban kitchen freezer. In forced cryonic suspension, may cold hell hold enough deep magic to fire the new shoot through. Thank you.
My husband's grandfather, the jeweler. So we may find ourselves taking on other people's memories, slipping on the mantle of their lives until they become part of us and walk where we walk, second-hand shadows, like the memory of my husband's memory when we went back, of that fastidious, courteous man who dealt in heirlooms and timepieces with an eye for the piece out of place. So perhaps I was primed to be affected, but anyway, when we pushed open the glass door, there we were face to face with where he was no longer, in black and crimson, spotlit decor, and the practiced smile of a well-heeled lady, asking whether she could help us, and while my husband, gesturing, was getting into a laborious explanation of the who and why and when of our presence, I felt the clasp of the present loosen, and the facets of someone else's past, in a silent clamoring for attention, pressed themselves in around us, and gestured him in turn to be silent and take in our surrounds, the padded trays and cabinets of rings and bangles, chains and chokers, of lockets and brooches and beads, the sheen and the gleam of gold against cream, amid gemstones on cushions of velvet, and in my husband's eyes a kind of desperation, until I saw him see, off to the right, the curl of the old wrought iron staircase, up to what used to be the working area, where repairs used to be carried out, how many used to be, where my husband's grandfather, the jeweler, used to work. Thank you.
Well, Nathan, you certainly had a difficult task there with some of those commended. I don't envy that position.
I did. Thank you. I'd like to thank them for making it so difficult for me. It's really hard towards the end to make those decisions. But,
it's actually lovely, although we had a few technical issues during that patch, but it's actually really lovely to hear the poets read their own words. It really brings their thoughts or probably expression to life. It really makes it quite a different experience.
Yeah, and thank you to Woorilla for all the work you've done doing these pre-records and these live crosses, because it makes it very special.
Yeah. Now, we're getting down to the pointy end of business now. Runners up. Tell us a bit about this poem, and then perhaps you can announce it.
Yeah, this poem tells a really moving story of a priest going to meet a couple, and he's meeting this couple. They're in a relationship that he really envies after years of service to the church. So it's an awkward scene, uncomfortable in its intimacy, and the poem really just explores that beautifully. It doesn't give us too much detail. It leaves room for us to imagine it and feel it. And I'd like to congratulate Rob Wallace as being the runner-up of the Judith Rodriguez open section this year for his poem, Priest.
The Resurrection Machine. We have used the resurrection machine to confirm our expectations, to favour the corpses of the rich. We have only brought back what we can find in our mirrors. Our prophets have left empty mausoleums and do not require our blessing, and the lesser saints and angels are too quiet, too humble. They refuse to show us new miracles. For all the talk of a new golden age, for all this great expense, the machine has been a disappointment, a sideshow. The damned seem thinner for their second coming. When we plundered the Nazi bunker, there were such hopes for the spectacle of hell, but Hitler has proven to be smaller than his portrait, eager to please, full of his failures, and we have no knife edge sharper than the first death for him. We cannot kill him enough, and he does not fear plunging by the ankles into that old dissolution. The resurrected cannot be trusted, for they have come from the conspiracy we must all join once, and though they vow they are no different, they are silent on God. It has been a passing obsession, like most momentary fashions, and we stir the machine less often to its task. The dead have never asked to be reborn, and that is all we need to know. Who would test it on themselves that was not forced to? One day the great wheel may seize, and we would have to squeeze our revenge from life. It is not for us, and it is not for our children. Or someday, some sly thing may stow away in the corner of their reborn eye. Or worse, they might not answer when we call.
Well, I hope you've been paying attention, because that definitely wasn't Rob Wallace. That was, and apologies to both, that was, sorry, I've got it here, that was the poem My Husband's Grandfather, the Jeweller by Dennis O'Hagan. That was the The Resurrection Machine, from Damon O'Brien. Apologies, and apologies to you. Did you have a little heart attack then? I can't hear you, Nathan, sorry.
No, I'm all right. I was really pleased to see that Damon was highly commended. He won it last year, of course, with the 8th strike, so it was really nice to see that he got up there.
Okay, perhaps we need that. We were just trying to really build Rob's runners-up poem. That's what we were doing. We were creating more of a climax. So now it will definitely be Rob Wallace, the runner-up, for his poem, The Priest.
Priest, you take the steps down to our front door, one at a time, as if your knees buckle under the weight of prayer. The small bag you carry for an overnight stay clinks. It doesn't sound like pajamas, a change of underwear, a stringent volume on the lives of the saints you've struggled for years to emulate. You greet both of us with a hug, cling on much longer than we wanted, a candle lit for an urgent need. In the kitchen, you open the bag, produce 2 bottles of wine, a bottle of whiskey, nothing else. This is an act of generosity, or it measures the religious life, the toll it's taken on your sexuality. You begin our meal with a prayer, celebrate friendship, proud and envious of us, a pair of beads on your rosary. We are reduced to a congregation. Your sermon eased with the blood of Christ, is a litany of anniversaries. The day you first met my partner in a church, the year that he left the seminary, and after ordination, the stations of your cross, a thorny journey through promotions to smaller and smaller parishes, a snide excommunication. You have devoted your life to Jesus. Now you admit you wish his name had been Damien or Angelo or Ben. We listen in silence to this disclosure, not surprised, but not comfortable in this confessional, our roles reversed. No amount of Hail Marys, no blessings, no forgiveness of sins can compensate for the years of sacrifice and denial. You leave the next morning, each step a retreat back to seclusion, each intake of breath a whisper withdrawn.
And you're on.
Congratulations, we finally got there and we finally got to hear what a wonderful poem from Wob Wallace. And I have to say, it does come on my radio show and deliver some of his poems. So I am familiar with his poems. So I'm very happy to see that he has become the runners-up. So thank you for that. But now, Nathan, the winner.
Winner this year, I'm really pleased to announce, is Kim Waters for the poem The Builder. This is just a finely crafted, beautifully structured poem, stays on track. It's about a young child and their relationship with the builder, and it opens up beautifully towards the end to the open roof sky. It was a pleasure to read. This is well-measured poetry. It's strong because of its attention to form and structure, to music, to ideas and language, and it's just 7 neat terses that are beautifully delivered. So congratulations, Kim Waters, and I can't wait to hear her read the poem.
Great, and we've got the audio for this poem now.
The Builder. Sometimes I hear the scaffolding strain, his whistle through the plasterless rooms, and I'm there again, 7 years old, watching his hands cradle a brick, set it square, remove a spill with the point of a diamond-shaped knife. I remember his hair flecked with paint, a nail purse belted around his waist, a flat pencil, fold-up ruler, and a packet of Becks in his overall bib. The way he'd hammer and nail, his gaze a spirit level of concentration, as he zithered a wedge of wood with his saw. How he'd jam one knee up against a horse, shaved timber falling in curls around his hobnailed boots, and the times he'd lift me onto his rafted shoulders, and we'd move through the whalebone rooms of a house, him sure-footed, walking the line of his tight-roped years, and me reaching into the open-roofed sky.
Okay, we're nearly live.
Well done to Kim Waters for his poem, The Builder. And I have to say another big thank you to Nathan Kerner for judging what would have been a very difficult task. And so thank you for his contributions and also for last year as well. So great to have him for the Judith Rodriguez Open section of the Woorilla Poetry Prize. Just to let you know that Brian Blacklog was the winner of the last question for our Steelsgate Winery, and we have one more to give away, and the question is very easy question. It's probably too easy, but you know, it's getting on to the end of the competition, so I'm lightening up a bit. And who is the name of the poet what is the name of the poet and the poem, double question, who won this year's Judith Rodriguez Open section this year. So you should be able to get that once I get those answers coming in. Now, I think it's time for a bit of music. We've had a few technical issues. We just need a little bit of music to let all that creativity sink in. So without further ado, please give it up virtually for our next music artist, and it's James Franklin with, I love this title, Who Hangs the Moon?
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. It's very nice to be around all this beautiful poetry. So yeah, my name is James Franklin. I'm singing a song from my debut album, which was released earlier this year, called Kid. This is a song called Who Hangs the Moon, which I wrote after seeing this YouTube series, which kind of documents people with a terminal illness in their last days. And there was one in particular that kind of touched me, which was a woman who was suffering from illness, and the last day she wanted to be married to her husband, and she did. And in one of the cut scenes, she said that when I go, I hope he knows that to me he was the man who hung the moon. So
it's beautiful. He's great.
In July, who wrote that book? Who wrote that song? Who wrote the letters of love in your arms? Guess I'll know soon. Who hangs the moon? Who writes such things in bathroom stalls? If I wanna have a good time, at least I know who to call. Try calling Susie, but she sounded like Paul. Guess it's a joke, I'm letting go. I'll find out soon. Who hangs the moon? And I can surely say that I'm not sure if trying to answer questions will lead to more. But I can surely say that I would cry if ever in my life I find out who lights the sky. Who wrote that book? Who wrote that song? Who wrote the letters of love in your arms? Guess I'll know soon. Who hangs the moon? Yes, I'll find out soon. Who hangs the moon?
Thank you.
Wow, what an artist, and what a beautiful backstory to that song, and live, that was so beautiful. As I said, that was James Franklin. I have to get that track, James. That was amazing.
Yeah, sure, yeah, it's available everywhere, so feel free.
I just thought, and your backstory to that was absolutely beautiful. Your voice is amazing. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. As I said, that was James Franklin. I suppose you can get it on iTunes and all that sort of stuff. We've lost him, but I'm sure you can, so you can either Google it. I'm sure he's on Facebook and all those social platforms. Well, I think that's about it for this afternoon. thank you for staying with us. I'm sure that you've enjoyed this afternoon, despite those technical issues. And live, that was so beautiful. As I said, we're having a bit of feedback issues. It's always nice to hear your voice back. I think sometimes, if you're so inclined, I am on radio. So now, that was James Franklin. But what we are doing now, it's our raffle giveaway. I don't know if we've got our last winner for the Steelsgate Winery, which was, if anyone's got back to us, but it was the name of the poet and the poem who won the Judith Rodriguez open section. So he's just on with Nathan Kernow, so I'm sure we'll get someone Facebooking that straight now. And we're also going to give away the raffle, which has been digitally spun. And it is for the Babbage food hamper and the Dimmicks book voucher. And I believe the winners are going to be on screen, which I can see here. And the winners are, it is the first winner, which will be the Babbage food, is Pippa Kay, which you've won. That's great. So congratulations. And also Jane Britt, which will be a Dimmicks book voucher. I just had to randomly select them. I hope that you're okay with those ones. So well done to you, and thank you for entering our raffle. I'm just going to ask our organisation team if we do have a winner for the final bottle of wine, the Steelsgate wine, who got the poetry prize correctly, but we're just waiting for some justification on that, but they might come back to us. Well, that is, sorry, excuse me, but do we have the winner for the final prize? If anyone can, it is the name and poet of the open section for this year as our final one. If we don't have it, we'll just, well, I'll just drink that after the gig here. With some of these technical issues, I wouldn't mind a bottle of wine, but that's okay. So, congratulations to our raffle winners again. And, well, what can I say? What a great afternoon of poetry it was, from our youth session, the Louise Rockney youth section, through to our cultural and linguistically diverse, and obviously the open section. I can see that we have a lot of talent nationally around Australia. So it's a virtual wrap for the Woorilla Poetry Prize 2020, and I would like to thank our special guests, Jeff Springfield for opening the ceremony, Kevin Brophy, Sandy Jeffs, and our performers Lily Violet and obviously James Franklin as well. Again, a very special thank you to our major sponsors, the Pay Festival run by Emerald Community House Victoria, and our event sponsors, Steelsgate Winery and Babbage Food. A massive thank you to our esteemed judges, Emily Zoe Baker and Nathan Kernow, for their time and commitment to this competition. To our wonderful organising team, who you cannot see, but they are running around behind me, and that is Nolene Blair, Phil Byers, Frank Leonard, Blaze Cosme, and our competition founder, Maria Millers. We will be back in 2021. Hopefully, we will have an auditorium full of you. But now that we are doing it online, we hope that all around Australia you can attend this competition going forward. If one thing COVID has given us, it has given us agility and the ability to adapt. And that's what we've done this year. And I appreciate your patience through some of these technical issues. For updates, please follow us on Facebook, or for next year's competition, you can email info@woorilla.org.au, and we will be announcing the new dates for entrance. Before I go, I would like to leave you with a little story. On the 6th of September, when it was announced that Victoria would extend its lockdown, I saw someone post this sign. There is no lockdown or restrictions for kindness, empathy, compassion, creativity, laughter, and most of all, love. To me at that moment, that was pure poetry. Words have power. Stay inspired, keep writing, and we can't wait to read and hear your poems in 2021. Thank you.
Well done.